Okay, this is chapter 6 of Read Me or Rue It by Father O'Sullivan. This chapter is entitled, What the Holy Souls Do for Those Who Help Them. That's you, and that's me. St. Alphonsus Liguori says that though the Holy Souls cannot merit for themselves, they can obtain for us great graces. They are not, formally speaking, intercessors as the saints are, but through the sweet providence of God, they can obtain for us as astounding favors and deliver us from evils, sickness, and dangers of every kind. It is beyond all doubt, as we have already said, that they repay us 1,000 times for anything we can do for them, and that we do for them. The following facts, a few hundreds, which we might quote, are sufficient to show what powerful and generous friends the Holy Souls are. How a girl found her mother. A poor servant girl in France once heard a sermon on the Holy Souls which made an indelible impression on her mind. She was deeply moved by the thought of the intense and unceasing suffering the souls endure, and horrified to see how cruelly they are neglected and forgotten by their friends on earth. Among other things, the preacher stressed was that many souls who are in reality near to their release, one mass might suffice to set them free, are oftentimes long detained. It may be for years, just because the last needful suffrage has been withheld or forgotten or neglected. Suffrages are the acts that we do for them. With her simple faith, Jeanne Marie resolved that, cost what it might cost, she would have a mass said for them every month, especially for the soul nearest to heaven. She earned little, and it was sometimes difficult to keep her promise, but she never failed. On one occasion, she went to Paris with her mistress, and there fell ill, so that she was obliged to go to hospital. Unfortunately, the illness proved to be a long one, and her mistress had to return home, hoping that her maid would soon rejoin her. When at last the poor servant girl was able to leave the hospital, all she had left of her scanty earnings was 1 franc. What was she to do? Where to turn? Suddenly, the thought flashed across her mind that she had not had her usual monthly mass offered for the Holy Souls. But she had only 1 franc. That was little enough to buy her food. Yet her confidence that the Holy Souls would not fail her triumphed. She made her way into a church and asked a priest, just about to say Mass, if he would offer it for the Holy Souls. He consented to do so, never dreaming that the modest alms offered was the only money the poor girl possessed. At the conclusion of the holy sacrifice, our heroine left the church. A wave of sadness clouded her face. She felt utterly bewildered. A young gentleman, touched by her evident distress, asked her if she was in trouble and if he could help her. She told her story briefly and ended by saying how much she desired work. Somehow she felt consoled at the kind way in which the young man listened to what she had said, and fully recovered her confidence. "I am delighted beyond measure," he said, "to help you. I know a lady who is even now looking for a servant. Come with me." And so saying, he led her to a house not far distant and bade her ring the bell, assuring her that she would find work. In answer to her ring, the lady of the house herself opened the door and inquired what she required. "Madam," she said, "I have been told that you are looking for a servant. I have no work and should be glad to get the place." The lady was amazed and replied, "Who could have told you that I needed a servant? It was only a few minutes ago that I had to dismiss my maid, and at a moment's notice. You did not meet her?" "No, madam. The person that informed me that you required a servant was a young gentleman." "Impossible!" exclaimed the lady. "No young man, in fact, no one at all, could have known that I needed a servant." "But, madam," the girl answered excitedly, "that is the young man who told me," pointing to a picture on the wall. "Why, child, that is my only son, who has been dead for more than a year." "Dead or not," asserted the girl with deep conviction in her voice, "it was he who told me to come to you, and he even led me to the door. See the scar over his eye? I would know him anywhere." Then followed the full story of how she had had Mass offered with her last franc for the holy souls, especially for the one nearest to heaven. Convinced at last of the truth of what Jean Marie told her, the lady received her with open arms. "Come," she said, "but not as my servant, but as my dear daughter. You have sent my darling boy to heaven. I have no doubt that it was he who brought you to me." That's a beautiful story. How a poor boy became a bishop, a cardinal, and a saint. Peter Damian lost both father and mother shortly after his birth. One of his brothers adopted him but treated him with unnatural harshness, forcing him to work hard and giving him poor food and scanty clothing. One day, Peter found a silver piece which represented to him a small fortune. A friend told him that he could conscientiously use it for himself, as the owner could not be found. The only difficulty Peter had was to choose what it was he most needed, for he was in sore need of many things. While turning the matter over in his young mind, it struck him that he could do a little better thing, which is have a Mass said for the holy souls in purgatory, especially for the souls of his dear parents. At the cost of a great sacrifice, he put his thought into effect and had the Mass offered. The holy souls repaid his sacrifice most generously. From that day forward, a complete change became noticeable in his fortunes. His eldest brother called at the house where he lived, and, horrified at the brutal hardships the little fellow was subjected to, arranged that he be handed over to his own care. He clad him and fed him as his own child, educated and cared for him most affectionately. Blessing followed on blessing. Peter's wonderful talents became known, and he was rapidly promoted to the priesthood. Sometime after, he was raised to the episcopacy and finally created cardinal. Miracles attested his great sanctity, so that after death he was canonized and made doctor of the church. The wonderful graces came to him after that one Mass said for the holy souls. An adventure in the Apennines, which is a mountain range. A group of priests were called to Rome to treat of a grave business matter. They were bearers of important documents, and a large sum of money was entrusted to them for the Holy Father, that's the Pope. Aware that the Apennines over which they had to pass were infested by daring bandits, they chose a trusty driver. There was no tunnel through the mountains nor train in those days. They placed themselves under the protection of the holy souls and decided to say a De Profundis, which I've said on this channel, every hour for them. When right in the heart of the mountains, the driver gave the alarm and at the same time lashed the horses into a furious gallop. Looking around, the priests saw fierce bandits at each side of the road with fixed rifles ready to fire. They were amazed that no shot rang out. They were completely at the mercy of the bandits. After an hour's headlong flight, the driver stopped and, looking at the priest, said, "I cannot understand how we escaped. These desperados never spare anyone." The fathers were convinced that they owed their safety to the holy souls, a fact that was afterwards confirmed beyond doubt. When their business was concluded in Rome, one of their number was detained in the Eternal City, where he was appointed chaplain to a prison. Not long after, one of the fiercest brigands in Italy was captured, condemned to death for a long series of murders, and awaited execution in this prison. Anxious to gain his confidence, the chaplain told him of several adventures he himself had had, and finally of his recent escape in the Apennines. The criminal manifested the greatest interest in the story. When it was ended, he exclaimed, "I was the leader of that band. We thought that you had money, and we determined to rob and murder you. An invisible force prevented each and all of us from firing, as we assuredly would have done had we been able." The chaplain then told him of how they had placed themselves under the protection of the holy souls, and that they ascribed their deliverance to their protection. The bandit found no difficulty in believing it. In fact, it made his conversion more easy. He died full of repentance. How Pius IX cured a bad memory. The Venerable Pius IX appointed a holy and prudent religious bishop of his diocese. The priest, alarmed at the responsibility put on him, begged earnestly to be excused. His protests were in vain. The Holy Father knew his merits. Overcome with apprehension, the humble religious solicited an audience with the Pope, who received him most graciously. Once more he pleaded earnestly to be excused, but the Pope was immovable. At the last recourse, Padre Tommaso told the Holy Father that he had had a very bad memory, which would naturally prove to be a grave impediment in the high office put on him. Pius IX answered with a smile, "Your diocese is very small in comparison with the universal church, which I carry on my shoulders. Your cares will be very light in comparison to mine. I too suffered from a grave defect of memory, but I promise to say a fervent prayer daily for the holy souls, who in return have obtained from me an excellent memory. Do you likewise, dear Father, and you will have cause to rejoice." The more we give, the more we get. A businessman in Boston joined the Association of the Holy Souls and gave a large sum of money annually that prayers and masses might be said for them. The director of the association was surprised at the gentleman's generosity, for he knew that he was not a rich man. He asked kindly one day if the alms he so generously gave was his own offering, or donations which he gathered from others. "What I offer, dear Father," he said, "is my own offering. Be not alarmed. I am not a very rich man, and you may think that I give more than I am able to. It is not so. For far from losing my charity to the holy souls, far from losing by my charity, the holy souls see to it that I gain considerably more than I give. They are second to none in generosity." The printer of Cologne. The celebrated printer of Cologne, William Freyson, gives us the following account of how his child and wife were restored to health by the holy souls. William Freyson got the order to print a little work on purgatory, correcting the proofs. His attention was caught by the facts narrated in the book. He learned for the first time what wonders the holy souls can work for their friends. Just at that time, his son fell grievously ill, and soon the case became desperate. Remembering what he had at once promised to spread at his own expense 100 copies of the book, which his firm was printing. To make the promise more solemn, he went to the church and there made his vow. At once a sense of peace and confidence filled his soul. On his return home, the boy, who had been unable to swallow a drop of water, asked for food. Next day he was out of danger and soon completely cured. At once, Freyson ordered the books on purgatory to be distributed, feeling sure that it was the best way to obtain help for the suffering souls, by interesting 100 people in them. That's why I'm doing these videos. No one who knows what they suffer can refuse to pray for them. Time passed, and a new sorrow fell to the share of the printer. This time his dear wife was stricken down, and despite every care grew daily worse. She lost the use of her mind and was almost completely paralyzed, so that the doctor gave up all hope. The husband, bethinking him of what the holy souls had done for his boy, again ran to the church and promised to distribute 200 of the books on purgatory, begging in exchange the urgent succor of the holy souls. The urgent succor of the holy souls. Wonder to relate, the mental aberration ceased. His wife's mind became normal, and she recovered the use of her limbs and of her tongue. In a short time, she was perfectly restored to health. The cure of a cancer. Dr. Joanna de Menzies tells of her cure. She was suffering severely from a cancerous growth in the leg and was plunged in grief. Remembering what she had heard of the power of the souls in purgatory, she resolved to place all her confidence in them and had 9 masses offered for them. She promised, moreover, to publish her cure if it was granted. Gradually, the swelling went down and the tumor and cancer disappeared. An escape from brigands. Father Luis Manacci, zealous missionary, had great devotion to the holy souls. He found himself obliged to set out on a dangerous journey, but confidently asked the holy souls to protect him in the dangers that he was likely to meet with. His road lay through a vast desert, which he knew to be infested by brigands, which are bandits. While plodding along, saying the rosary for the holy souls, what was not his surprise, on looking round, to find himself surrounded as by a bodyguard of blessed spirits. Soon he discovered the reason. He had fallen into an ambuscade of brigands, but the holy souls at once surrounded him and drove off the miscreants who sought his life. The holy souls did not abandon him until he was well out of danger. Amazing. A return to life. The prior of Kierfontein Taine gives us his story. A young boy of his parish fell dangerously ill with a typhoid fever. His parents were overcome with grief and asked me to recommend him to the prayers of the members of the Association of the Holy Souls. It was Saturday. The boy was at death's door. The doctors had had recourse to every remedy. All in vain. They could think of nothing more. They were in despair. I was the only one who had hope. I knew the power of the Holy Souls, for I had already seen what they can do. On Sunday, I begged the associates of the Holy Souls to pray fervently for our sick friend. On Monday, the danger passed, and the boy was cured. Now, how to avoid purgatory. This precious little booklet that I have now read to you in multiple videos, by the way, should be read by everyone desirous of a happy death and of avoiding the awful fires of purgatory. The book is eminently practical, and the means it suggests for avoiding purgatory are easy and within the reach of everyone. Everyone can pray for the Holy Souls. There's really no excuse. Many, we dare say, most souls go to purgatory after death simply because they never heard how easy it is to avoid these dreadful fires, or at least to lessen, notably, the time and lessen the pains which otherwise will be so long and so intense. This beautiful booklet, How to Avoid Purgatory, makes this very clear. Dear reader, make sure to read it. Now, he talks about this, and he gives this is a very old book. This is from the 30s, so I don't think this exists. The book probably exists, but I don't, the address doesn't. And it just tells you to go and order the book or get it for free. But look for the book, and I'm going to look for it too. It's called How to Avoid Purgatory. Now, let's just see here. I'm reading something, sorry. In my long life, writes a priest, I have noticed with amazement how few Catholics give generously to the poor and needy, notwithstanding what our blessed Lord commands them to do. I have also remarked that some Catholics are indeed very generous and good. Some care for the poor, others look after the sick, lepers, consumptives, cancer patients, and mentally deficient. All have their friends. Some prefer to help the young. The hearts of others go out to the old. All the various classes of the poor and the needy find companions, though, as I have said, these are not nearly as many and generous as they should be. The strangest thing of all is that I have never met one man or woman who has dedicated himself or herself entirely, wholeheartedly, to the greatest of all charities, to the greatest of all needy, the holy souls in purgatory. There may be a few who do so, but in my long and very varied experience, I never met any. Well, you're listening to one right now. Alas, the words of this good priest are only too true. We appeal to those, dear listener, to those who have not as yet dedicated themselves to any particular form of charity, to dedicate all their energies to the holy souls. Let them do what they can personally and also induce others to help. The best way is to spread about hundreds of copies of this little book. I would say recommend these videos on the holy souls, right? Read Me or Rue It. And so make hundreds of friends for the holy souls. Who can read it and refuse to help them? Now, and that's the end of the booklet, by the way, which is really a great booklet. I would recommend, you do your suffrages, which of course is saying the rosary for them every day, having masses said for them, Latin masses most particularly, serving at mass in their honor, offering all your sufferings that you've gone through, that you are going through, offering the good works that you do for them, and praying for them all the time. I like the Jesus prayer. I like the rosary saying for them. But of course, you could say a Hail Mary and Our Father, say something like praise be in the name of Jesus, 50 times in their honor. Anything. But don't forget them because they're in constant suffering. When you're sleeping, they're suffering. When you're eating, they're suffering. So the more we help them, the more they're going to help us. We need help. We're in a demonized world. All right? If you haven't figured it out, come on now. Wake up. Look around. So we need their help. And you can get it. And guess what? You can avoid or lessen your purgatory by helping them. And I can say that I have asked them for favors, and they have come true for me. They really do. So they're not cold to your needs too. But that's all they can do. They can pray for you, but they can't pray for themselves. And they'll gladly pray for you. You pray for them, they're praying for you. Okay, hope you enjoyed this booklet. Please spread it around. And I'll do more on the Holy Souls. I keep encouraging you to do this because it's really my main focus. I want to teach the Catholic faith because I find people don't know it. But you really, need to pray for the Holy Souls, okay? Because your relatives might not be in heaven. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.